Red Hot Chili Peppers. Red Hot Chili Peppers are an American rock band formed in Los Angeles in 1983. The group's musical style primarily consists of rock with an emphasis on funk, as well as elements from other genres such as punk rock and psychedelic rock. When played live, their music incorporates elements of jam band due to the improvised nature of many of their performances. Currently, the band consists of founding members vocalist Anthony Kiedis and bassist Flea, Michael Peter Balsbury, longtime drummer Chad Smith, and former touring guitarist Josh Klinghoffer. Red Hot Chili Peppers are one of the best-selling bands of all time with over 80 million records sold worldwide. They have been nominated for 16 Grammy Awards, of which they have won 6, and are the most successful band in alternative rock radio history, currently holding the records for most number 1 singles, 13, most cumulative weeks at number 1, 85, and most top 10 songs, 25, on the Billboard Alternative Songs chart. In 2012, they were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The band's original lineup, originally named Tony Flo and the Miraculously Majestic Masters of Mayhem, featured guitarist Hillel Slovak and drummer Jack Irons, alongside Kiedis and Flea. Because of commitments to other bands, Slovak and Irons did not play on the band's 1984 self-titled debut album. Slovak performed on the second and third albums, Freaky Styley, 1985, and The Uplift Mofo Party Plan, 1987, but he died from a heroin overdose in 1988. As a result of his friend's death, Irons chose to leave the group. After short-lived replacements on guitar and drums, John Frusciante and Smith joined in 1988. The lineup of Flea, Kiedis, Frusciante, and Smith was the longest-lasting and recorded 5 studio albums beginning with Mother's Milk, 1989. In 1990, the group signed with Warner Brothers Records and recorded the album Blood Sugar Sex Magik, 1991, under producer Rick Rubin. This album became the band's first major commercial success, but Frusciante grew uncomfortable with the band's popularity and left abruptly in 1992 in the middle of the Blood Sugar Sex Magik tour. After 2 temporary guitarists, Dave Navarro joined the group in 1993 and played on their subsequent album, One Hot Minute, 1995. Although commercially successful, the album failed to match the critical or popular acclaim of Blood Sugar Sex Magik, selling less than half as much as its predecessor. Navarro was fired from the band in 1998. Frusciante, fresh out of drug rehabilitation, rejoined the band that same year at Flea's request. The reunited quartet returned to the studio to record Californication, 1999, which became the band's biggest commercial success with 16 million copies sold worldwide. That album was followed 3 years later by the Way, 2002, and then 4 years later by the double album Stadium Arcadium, 2006, their first number 1 album in America. After a world tour, the group went on an extended hiatus. Frusciante announced he was amicably leaving the band in 2009 to focus on his solo career. Klinghoffer, who had worked both as a sideman for the band on their Stadium Arcadium tour and on Frusciante's solo projects, replaced him. The band's 10th studio album, I'm With You, was released in 2011 and topped the charts in 18 different countries. The band released their 11th studio album, The Getaway, in 2016. The album was produced by Danger Mouse, marking the first time since Mother's Milk that the Red Hot Chili Peppers had not worked with Rubin, and topped the charts in 10 different countries. As of November 2018, the band is in the process of working on their 12th studio album, which they expect to release in 2019. History: 1983 to 1984, early history. Red Hot Chili Peppers were formed in Los Angeles by singer Anthony Kiedis, guitarist Hillel Slovak, bassist Flea, and drummer Jack Irons, all of whom were classmates from Fairfax High School. Originally going under the band name of Tony Flo and the Miraculously Majestic Masters of Mayhem, their first performance was at the Rhythm Lounge Club to a crowd of approximately 30 people, opening for Gary and Neighbors Voices. Inspired by punk-funk acts like The Contortions and Defunct, They wrote for the occasion, which involved the band improvising music while Kaidas rapped a poem he had written called Out in LA. At the time, Slovak and Irons were already committed to another group, What Is This? However, the performance was so lively, that the band was asked to return the following week. Due to this unexpected success, the band changed its name to Red Hot Chili Peppers, playing several more shows at various LA clubs and musical venues. 6 songs from these initial shows were on the band's first demo tape. In November 1983, manager Lindy Getz struck a 7-album deal with EMI America and Enigma Records. 2 weeks earlier, however, What Is This? Had also obtained a record deal with MCA. Slovak and Irons still considered the Red Hot Chili Peppers as only a side project, and so in December 1983 they quit to focus on What Is This? Instead of dissolving the band, Kaidas and Flea recruited new members. Cliff Martinez, a friend of Flea's and member from the punk band, The Weirdos, was the new replacement for Irons. The band held auditions for a new guitarist but decided after a few practices that Weirdos guitarist Dick Stinney did not fit. Kaidas described the 2 final candidates, Mark 9 and Jack Sherman, respectively, as a hip avant-garde art school refugee and a nerd-looking guy with a combed-back jufro with an unknown background. Musically, Sherman clicked right away with Flea and Martinez and was hired as Slovak's replacement. The band released their eponymous debut album, The Red Hot Chili Peppers, in August 1984. Though the album did not set sales records, airplay on college radio and MTV helped to build a fan base, and the album ultimately sold 300,000 copies. Gang of 4 guitarist Andy Gill, who produced the album, didn't embrace the band's musical aesthetic or ideology, argued constantly with the band over the record's sound. Kaidas recalled that Andy's thing was having a hit at all costs, but it was such a mistake to have an agenda. Despite the misgivings of Kaidas and Flea, Gill pushed the band to play with a cleaner, crisper, more radio-friendly sound. The band was disappointed in the record's overall sound, feeling it was overly polished and as if it had gone through a sterilizing goody two-shoes machine. The album included backing vocals by Gwen Dickey, the singer for the successful 1970s disco-funk group Rolls Royce. The band embarked on a grueling tour during which they performed 60 shows in 64 days. During the tour, continuing musical and lifestyle tension between Kaidas and Sherman complicated the transition between concert and daily band life. When the tour ended in October 1984, Sherman was fired. Hillel Slovak, who had just quit What Is This? Would rejoin the band in early 1985. 1985 to 1988, building a following and Slovak's death. George Clinton produced the next album, Freaky Styley, 1985. Clinton combined various elements of punk and funk into the band's repertoire, allowing their music to incorporate a variety of distinct styles. The album featured Maceo Parker and Fred Wesley on many of the album's tracks. The band often indulged in heavy heroin use while recording the album, which influenced the lyrics and musical direction of the album. The band had a much better relationship with Clinton than with Gill, but Freaky Styley, released on August 16, 1985, also achieved little success, failing to make an impression on any chart. The subsequent tour was also considered unproductive by the band. Despite the lack of success, the band was satisfied with Freaky Styley. Kaidas reflected that it so surpassed anything we thought we could have done that we were thinking we were on the road to enormity. The band appeared in the 1986 skate movie Thrashin', directed by David Winters and starring Josh Brolin, playing the song Black Eyed Blonde from Freaky Styley. During this time the band also appeared in the movie Tough Guys starring Burt Lancaster and Kirk Douglas performing the song Set It Straight at a Los Angeles nightclub. In spring 1986, the band decided to begin work on their upcoming album. EMI gave the band a budget of $5,000 to record a demo tape, and the band chose to work with producer Keith Levine from Pill, because he shared the band's interest in drugs. Levine and Slovak decided to put aside $2,000 of the budget to spend on heroin and cocaine, which created tension between the band members. Martinez's heart was no longer in the band, but he did not quit, so Kaidas and Flea fired him. After the firing of Martinez in April 1986, original drummer Jack Irons rejoined the band to Kaida's, Flea, and Slovak's great surprise, which marked the first time all four founding members were together since 1983. During the recording and subsequent tour of Freaky Styley, Kaidas and Slovak were dealing with debilitating heroin addictions. Due to his addiction, Kaidas didn't have the same drive or desire to come up with ideas or lyrics and appeared at rehearsal literally asleep. For the band's third album, The Uplift Mofo Party Plan, 1987, the Chili Peppers attempted to hire Rick Rubin to produce the album, but he declined due to the band's increasing drug problems. The band eventually hired Michael Bainhorn from the Art Funk Project Material, who was the band's last choice, to be their producer. The band's early attempts at recording the album were halted due to Kaidas's worsening drug problems, which were so bad that the band briefly fired him. Bainhorn said the band went through hell recording the Uplift Mofo Party Plan due to Kaidas's drug issues, and that he was the one tasked to fire Kaidas. Following the band winning the LA Weekly Band of the Year award, Kaidas was prompted to get clean in order to continue making music. Kaidas called his mother in Michigan for guidance, and she promptly sent him to drug rehabilitation. After being in Michigan for a month, Kaidas called Flea to inform him that he was attending meetings and going cold turkey, no longer getting high. Kaidas said he was informed by Flea that they had auditioned singers and that one was hired, but he could tell by Flea's voice that they were not happy with him. A few days later, Kaidas received a phone call from Flea asking him, "Do you think you'd want to come back here and maybe play a couple of songs and see how it feels to be back in the band?" Kaidas agreed to return and felt a whole new wave of enthusiasm due to his sobriety, and wrote the lyrics to Fight Like a Brave on the plane ride home. Kaidas rejoined the Red Hot Chili Peppers in Los Angeles to record the Uplift Mofo Party Plan. Kaidas sat down with Michael Bainhorn to discuss the recording of the album. Kaidas planned to record the album in 10 days and write the songs during the recording sessions. Songs began to form quickly, and the album took shape, blending the same funk feel and rhythms as Freaky Styley, with a harder, more immediate approach to punk rock. The album was recorded in the basement of the Capitol Records building. The recording process for the album was difficult. Kaidas would frequently disappear to seek drugs. After 50 days of sobriety, Kaidas decided to take drugs again to celebrate his new music. His drug use made a mess of the early recording process, but the band still had an enjoyable time recording the album. The band was musically inspired by the return of their original drummer Jack Irons, who added such an important and different element to our chemistry. Slovak helped Kaidas record his vocals on the album. In between takes, Slovak would run around the studio out of excitement and say, "This is the most beautiful thing we've ever done." In September 1987, the Uplift Mofo Party Plan was released, becoming their first album to appear on any chart. Although it peaked at only number 148 on the Billboard 200, this was a significant success compared to the first two. During this period, however, Kaidas and Slovak had both developed serious drug addictions, often abandoning the band, each other, and their significant others for days on end. Slovak's addiction led to his death from a heroin overdose on June 25, 1988, not long after the conclusion of the Uplift tour. Kaidas fled the city and did not attend Slovak's funeral, referenced in the song "This Is the Place" from 2002's By the Way, considering the situation to be surreal and dreamlike. After returning to LA following his departure after Slovak's death, Kaidas, Flea, Irons and manager Lindy Getz had a meeting to figure out what to do next. Irons decided he had to leave the group, saying that he did not want to be part of a group where his friends were dying. Irons, who had battled through years of depression, went on to become a member of Seattle grunge band Pearl Jam many years later. With Slovak dead and Irons quitting, Kaidas and Flea debated whether they should continue making music, but ultimately decided to move ahead, hoping to continue what Slovak helped build. 1988 to 1989, successful new lineup. After losing two of the original band members, Flea and Kaidas started looking for musicians to fill those spots. Shortly after Irons' departure, they chose as Slovak's replacements Wayne Blackbeard McKnight, former Member of Parliament Funkadelic and who at one point briefly filled in for Slovak, when he was temporarily fired. D. H. Peligro of the punk rock outfit Dead Kennedys replaced Irons. Quietus and Flea had been friends of Peligro for many years and even had a joke band together called Three Little Butt Hairs. With a new lineup set, Quietus decided to enter rehab to fix his drug problem. Quietus entered a rehab facility in Van Nuys called ASAP. After 2 weeks into Quietus's rehab, he was taken by his counselor, Bob Timmons, to finally visit Slovak's grave. Quietus had no desire to be there, however. Timmons urged him to talk to Slovak. Within minutes, Quietus had opened up and could not stop crying. 30 days later, Quietus left rehab and was ready to resume his career with the band. 3 dates into the tour, McKnight was fired, because the chemistry was not there with the other three. McKnight was with the band long enough to record one song, Blues for Meister. Drums were performed by Jack Irons, bass and drums were recorded before Slovak's death, a song sung by Flea. McKnight was so unhappy about being fired he threatened to burn down Quietus's house. Shortly after McKnight's firing, Peligro introduced Quietus and Flea to a teenage guitarist named John Frusciante. Quietus actually had met Frusciante a year earlier outside of one of the band's shows. Frusciante was originally directed to audition for the band Thelonious Monster, but Quietus said that he knew right away that Frusciante would be in his band. An avid Red Hot Chili Peppers fan, Frusciante was, according to Flea, a really talented and knowledgeable musician. He, Frusciante, knows all the shit I don't know. I basically know nothing about music theory and he's studied it to death, inside and out. He's a very disciplined musician, all he cares about are his guitar and his cigarettes. Frusciante performed his first show with the band in September 1988. The new lineup immediately began writing music for the next album and went on a short tour dubbed the Turd Town Tour, although in November, Quietus and Flea felt the need to fire drummer Peligro due to his own drug and alcohol problems. Much like McKnight, Peligro did not take the news well. Flea stayed in bed for days after making the decision. Years later, Quietus said firing Peligro was one of the toughest things the band ever had to do. Although Quietus became a major part of Peligro's road to sobriety, which began right after he was fired. The Chili Peppers were again without a drummer and were forced to hold open auditions. Denise Zoom, a friend of the band, suggested Chad Smith, claiming he was the best drummer she had ever seen. The band agreed to audition Smith, but he was late and the last drummer to audition. Quietus recalled the first time he saw Smith by saying, "I spied this big lummox walking down the street with a really bad Guns N' Roses hairdo and clothes that were not screaming I've got style." Smith was a 6'3" tall drummer who, according to Flea, lit a fire under our asses. From the moment they started jamming, Smith and Flea instantly found chemistry. Quietus said the audition with Smith left the band in a state of frenzied laughter that we couldn't shake out of for a half an hour. Smith was so much different from the other three. Quietus, Flea and Frusciante were heavily influenced by punk rock, whereas Smith's taste in heavy metal music and his biker appearance contrasted with their punk rock views. Quietus informed Smith he would be hired on one condition: as an initiation to the band, Smith had to cut his long hair. He refused, though Quietus was not about to argue with the much larger Smith. Smith was hired as the band's fourth drummer in December 1988. Unlike the stop-start sessions for the Uplift Mofo Party Plan, 1987, where Quietus would frequently disappear to seek drugs, pre-production for Mother's Milk, 1989, went smoothly. The band recorded basic tracks during March and early April 1989 at Hully Gully Studios in Silver Lake. Songs like Knock Me Down were formed from jam sessions without any input from returning producer Michael Bainhorn, while Sexy Mexican Maid, Stone Cold Bush and Taste the Pain, which was recorded prior to Smith joining and features Fishbone drummer Philip Fish Fisher, were written with Peligro. Although there had been stress and conflict during the recording of other Chili Peppers albums, the Mother's Milk sessions were especially uncomfortable due to Bainhorn's incessant desire to create a hit. Frusciante and Quietus were frustrated with the producer's attitude. In the same month, the Chili Peppers embarked on a short tour to break in the new lineup. Released on August 16, 1989, Mother's Milk peaked at number 52 on the US Billboard 200. The record failed to chart in the United Kingdom and Europe, but climbed to number 33 in Australia. Knock Me Down reached number 6 on the US Modern Rock tracks, whereas Higher Ground charted at number 11. The latter of the two ultimately proved to be more successful, reaching number 54 in the UK and 45 in Australia and France. Mother's Milk was certified gold by the Recording Industry Association of America in late March 1990. It is now certified platinum, and was the first Chili Peppers album to ship over 500,000 units. 1990 to 1993, Breakthrough, International Fame and Fressant's first departure. In 1990, after the success of Mother's Milk, the group decided they had had enough of EMI and entered a major label bidding war, ultimately signing with Warner Brothers Records and hiring Rick Rubin to produce their then untitled fifth album. Rubin, who had originally turned the band down in 1987 due to the members' drug problems at the time, felt the band was in a better place and much more focused. He would go on to produce 5 of the band's subsequent studio albums. The writing process for this album was far more productive than it had been for Mother's Milk, with Kiedis stating, "Every day, there was new music for me to lyricize." The band spent 6 months recording a new album, with long periods of rehearsal, songwriting, and incubating ideas. However, Rubin was dissatisfied with a regular recording studio, and believed that a less orthodox setting would enhance the band's creative output. Rubin suggested the mansion magician Harry Houdini once lived in, to which they agreed. A crew was hired to set up a recording studio and other equipment required for production in the house. The band decided that they would remain inside the mansion for the duration of recording, though according to Kiedis, Smith was convinced the location was haunted, and refused to stay. He would, instead, come each day by motorcycle. Smith himself disputes this account, and instead claims the real reason he did not stay at the mansion was because he wanted to be with his wife. Fressant, however, disagreed with Smith, and said there are definitely ghosts in the house, and Fressant felt they were very friendly. "We, the band, have nothing but warm vibes and happiness everywhere we go in this house." Rubin is the current owner of the studio known as The Mansion. During production, the band agreed to let Flea's brother-in-law document the creative process on film. When the album's recording was complete, the Chili Peppers released the film, titled Funky Monks. The band was unable to decide on the title of the album, but to Rubin, one particular song title stuck out, Blood Sugar Sex Magic. Although it was not a featured song, Rubin believed it to be clearly the best title. In September 1991, Blood Sugar Sex Magic was released. Give It Away was released as the first single. It eventually became one of the band's biggest and most well-known songs, winning a Grammy Award in 1992 for Best Hard Rock Performance with Vocal, and became the band's first #1 single on the Modern Rock chart. The ballad Under the Bridge was released as the second single, and went on to reach number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart, the highest the band has reached on that chart as of 2016, and became one of the band's most recognizable songs. Other singles such as Breaking the Girl and Suck My Kiss also charted well. The album sold over 12 million copies. Blood Sugar Sex Magic was listed at number 310 on the Rolling Stone magazine list of 500 greatest albums of all time, and in 1992 it rose to number 3 on the US album charts, almost a year after its release. The band kicked off their Blood Sugar Sex Magic tour, which featured Nirvana, Pearl Jam, and Smashing Pumpkins, 3 of that era's biggest up-and-coming bands in alternative music, as opening acts. The unexpected success instantly turned Red Hot Chili Peppers into rock stars. Fressant was blindsided by his newfound fame, and struggled to cope with it. Soon after the album's release, he began to develop a dislike for the band's popularity, and personal problems between Kiedis and Fressant began to unfold. Kiedis recalled that he and Fressant used to get into heated discussions backstage after concerts. John would say, "We are too popular. I don't need to be at this level of success. I would just be proud to be playing this music in clubs like you guys were doing 2 years ago." The final dates with Frusciante were a mess, and Frusciante was so disconnected from the group, often changing the way he played on certain songs, which further got under Kiedis' skin. Unknown to others, Frusciante was also starting his own drug habit at the time and was shutting himself off from everyone except for his friend. Frusciante abruptly quit the band hours before a show during the Blood Sugar Japanese tour in May 1992. The band reached out to Dave Navarro, who had just split from Jane's Addiction, but who was involved in his own personal drug battles. The group held rehearsals with Xander Schloss, though after a few days they decided he was not the right fit either. Guitarist Eric Marshall, of Los Angeles band Martial Law, was hired to replace Frusciante, and the band headlined the Lollapalooza Festival in 1992. Marshall would also appear in the music videos for Breaking the Girl, If You Have to Ask, and on The Simpsons' fourth season finale, Krusty Gets Cancelled. In September 1992, the Peppers, with Marshall, performed Give It Away at the MTV Video Music Awards. The band was nominated for 7 awards including Video of the Year, which they did not obtain. However, they did manage to win 3 other awards, including Viewer's Choice. In February 1993, the band, along with George Clinton and the P.Funk All-Stars and Weapon of Choice, performed Give It Away at the Grammy Awards, a song which won the band their first Grammy later that evening. The performance marked the end of the Blood Sugar Sex Magik tour and Marshall's final performance with the band. The band had planned to begin a follow-up to Blood Sugar Sex Magik with Marshall. However, when it came time to play music, Marshall was always busy, so the band decided that Marshall failed to fit with their future plans and he was dismissed. With Marshall gone, the band decided to hold open auditions, which they considered a huge mess, but which, however, did lead to an encounter with Buckethead. The band enjoyed his rehearsal even though he claimed to have never heard of them. Flea felt he did not fit the feel of the band. Still without a guitarist, Kiedis was out one night at a local club and spotted Jesse Tobias of the Los Angeles-based band Mother Tongue. Kiedis felt like he had the right vibe for the band and he was recruited to be the new guitarist after a few auditions. However, his tenure with the band did not last long, with the rest of the band stating that the chemistry wasn't right. It was at this same time that Smith informed the band that Navarro was now ready to join the band. When offered the spot this time he accepted. In August 1993 the non-album single Soul to Squeeze was released and featured on the soundtrack to the movie Coneheads. The song reached number 1 on the Billboard US Modern Rock chart. 1994 to 1997, transitional period. Navarro first appeared with the band at Woodstock '94. The band opened their set wearing enormous light bulb costumes attached precariously to chrome metallic suits, making it near impossible for them to play their instruments. Navarro hated the idea but went with it. The performance saw the debut of new songs such as Warped, Airplane, and P. Although the songs were in the beginning stages and the lyrics were very different from the final versions. The band followed up their performance at Woodstock with a brief tour, which included headlining appearances at the Pop and Reading festivals as well as 2 performances as the opening act for the Rolling Stones. According to Kiedis, however, opening for the Stones was a horrible experience. While externally, the band appeared to be settled, the relationship between the 3 established members and Navarro had begun to deteriorate. His differing musical background made performing difficult as they began playing together, and continued to be an issue over the next year. Navarro admitted he did not care for funk music or jamming. Kiedis was also struggling with his heroin addiction. He had been through a dental procedure in Beverly Hills, in which an addictive sedative, Valium, was used. This caused him to relapse, and he once again became dependent on drugs, although the band would not find this out until later. Navarro's joining and Kiedis' continued drug addiction had a profound effect on the band and the subsequent sound of their next album, One Hot Minute, 1995. With Frusciante no longer present for collaboration, songs were written at a far slower rate. Working with Frusciante had been something Kiedis took for granted. John had been a true anomaly when it came to songwriting. He made it even easier than Hillel to create music, even though I'd known Hillel for years. I just figured that was how all guitar players were, that you showed them your lyrics and sang a little bit and the next thing you knew you had a song. That didn't happen right off the bat with Dave. To compensate, Kiedis and bassist Flea took several vacations together, during which entire songs were conceived, and with Kiedis often absent from recording due to his drug problems or struggling to come up with lyrics, Flea took a much bigger role in the writing process, coming up with ideas for many songs including full lyrics and even singing lead on his own song, P. Navarro's only album with the band was One Hot Minute, released in September after many delays and setbacks. Navarro's guitar work had created a stylistic departure in the band's sound, which was now characterized by prominent use of heavy metal guitar riffs and hints of psychedelic rock. The band described the album as a darker, sadder record compared to their previous material, which was not as universally well received as Blood Sugar Sex Magic. Many of the lyrics written by Kiedis were drug-related, including the lead single, Warped, which left Kiedis stunned that nobody else in the band picked up on his lyrics that he was using again. Broken relationships and deaths of friends and family also played a major role in the album's darker tone and lyrics. The ballad, Tearjerker, was written about Kurt Cobain, while Transcending, which was written by Flea, was about longtime friend, River Phoenix, and the single Shallow Be Thy Game took shots at religion. Despite mixed reviews, the album was a commercial success. Selling 8 million copies worldwide, it spawned the band's third #1 single, the ballad My Friends, and enjoyed chart success with the songs Warped and Airplane. This iteration of the band appeared on several soundtracks. I Found Out, a John Lennon cover, was featured on Working Class Hero, a tribute to John Lennon. The Ohio Players cover, Love Roller Coaster, was featured on the Beavis and Butthead Do America soundtrack, and was released as a single. The band began its tour for One Hot Minute in Europe in 1995 and played 16 shows. A US tour was to follow but was postponed after Chad Smith broke his wrist. The band considered carrying on with the tour, even at one point considering Jack Irons as a replacement for Smith, but there just was not enough time to rehearse with anyone new, and the dates were rescheduled for early 1996. The band spent most of 1996 playing shows in the United States and Europe. By 1997, for the first time, the band canceled many shows. Most of this was again due to problems within the band. Flea at that point was exhausted, tired of playing the same songs each night, and was seriously talking about quitting the band, while Kiedis had recently been involved in a motorcycle accident which left one arm in a sling and created yet another drug relapse due to his use of painkillers. Even Navarro was back to using drugs. 1997 saw the band playing just one show. This was at the very first Fuji Rock Festival. A massive typhoon hit that day, but the band played anyway. They played through an 8-song set before having to cut the show short due to the storm. This would be the final show with Navarro, and due to Flea's previous comments left many speculating if it was the end of the band. After making attempts to carry on with Navarro and record a follow-up to One Hot Minute, things were not working out, and due to Navarro's drug problems and lack of effort in wanting to create new music and chemistry on the road, the band felt it was time to part ways. In April 1998 it was announced that Navarro had left the band due to creative differences. Kiedis stated that the decision was mutual. Reports at the time, however, indicated Navarro's departure came after he attended a band practice under the influence of drugs, which at one point involved him falling backwards over his own amp. 1998 to 2001, return of Frusciante and newfound popularity. In the years following his departure from the band, it became public that John Frusciante had developed a heroin addiction, which left him in poverty and near death. Frusciante had lost contact with most of his friends. However, Flea always remained in contact, and he helped talk Frusciante into admitting himself to Los Encinas Drug Rehabilitation Center in January 1998. He concluded the process in February of that year and began renting a small apartment in Silver Lake. He acquired many injuries and problems in the years of his addiction, some requiring surgery, including permanent scarring on his arms, a restructured nose, and an oral infection, which led to his teeth being removed and replaced with dental implants. After Navarro's departure in early 1998, Red Hot Chili Peppers were on the verge of breaking up. Flea told Quietus, "The only way I could imagine carrying on, with Red Hot Chili Peppers, is if we got John back in the band." Quietus was surprised and thought there was no way Frusciante would ever want to work with him, as the two still had unresolved personal problems from when Frusciante quit in 1992. With Frusciante free of his addictions and ailments, Quietus and Flea thought it was an appropriate time to invite him back. In April 1998, when Flea visited him at his home and asked him to rejoin the band, Frusciante began sobbing and said, "Nothing would make me happier in the world." Flea decided to contact Quietus and have him meet with John to try and resolve any personal problems that the two might have had. Flea was relieved to find out that both had no bad blood towards each other and were once again excited to make music together. Within the week and, for the first time in 6 years, the reunited foursome jump-started the newly reunited Red Hot Chili Peppers. Anthony Quietus said of the situation, "For me, that was the defining moment of what would become the next 6 years of our lives together. That was when I knew that this was the real deal, that the magic was about to happen again. Suddenly we could all hear, we could all listen, and instead of being caught up in our finite little balls of bullshit, we could all become players in that great universal orchestra again." Despite the band's elation, Frusciante was both mentally and physically torn. Frusciante had not played with the band since his departure, and other than his solo albums had not picked up a guitar in years. He had lost his guitar's inner house fire from which he barely escaped, and experienced a difficult time resuming his prior life. Nonetheless, the group began jamming in Flea's garage, and it did not take long for Frusciante to regain his talent. New songs began to roll out. Frusciante's return restored a key component of the Chili Peppers sound, as well as a healthy morale. He brought with him his deep devotion to music, which affected the band's recording style during the sessions which produced their next album. Frusciante has frequently stated that his work on Californication was his favorite. In June 1999, after more than a year of production and meticulous practice, Californication was released as the band's 7th studio album. The album ultimately sold over 16 million copies and became the band's most successful recording to date. Californication contained fewer rap-driven songs than its predecessors, instead integrating textured, consistent, and melodic guitar riffs, vocals and bass lines. The record produced 3 more #1 modern rock hits, Scar Tissue, Other Side and Californication. Californication gained positive critical acceptance in contrast to its less popular predecessor, One Hot Minute, and was a greater success worldwide. While many critics credited the success of the album to Frusciante's return, they also noted that Quietus's vocals had also greatly improved. It was later listed at number 399 on the Rolling Stone magazine list of the 500 greatest albums of all time. In July 1999, as part of the band's 2-year-long international world tour in support of their new album, Red Hot Chili Peppers played at Woodstock 1999, which became infamous for the violence that resulted. Some 10 minutes before the show, they were asked by Jimi Hendrix's stepsister to play a cover of her brother's songs. After some hesitation due to not having performed the song in years, the band decided to play his classic Fire, which they had covered on Mother's Milk. Coincidentally, about 2/3 of the way into the band's set, the closing set of the 3-day concert, a small fire escalated into full-fledged vandalism and resulted in the intervention of riot control squads. The disruption escalated into violence when nearby property including ATMs and several semi-tractor trailers were looted and destroyed. Quietus felt that it was clear that this situation had nothing to do with Woodstock anymore. It wasn't symbolic of peace and love, but of greed and cashing in. "We woke up to papers and radio stations vilifying us for playing Fire." The tour also originated the band's first concert DVD, 2001's Off the Map. 2001 to 2007, continued success. The writing and formation of the band's next album, by the way, began immediately following the culmination of Californication's world tour, in spring 2001. As with Californication, much of the creation took place in the band members' homes, and other locations of practice, such as a recording studio stage. Quietus recalled of the situation, We started finding some magic and some music and some riffs and some rhythms and some jams and some grooves, and we added to it and subtracted from it and pushed it around and put melodies to it. Frusciante and Kaitis would collaborate for days straight, discussing and sharing guitar progressions and lyrics. For Kaitis, writing, by the way, was a whole different experience from Californication. John was back to himself and brimming with confidence. Before recording, by the way, 2002, the Chili Peppers decided that they would again have Rick Rubin produce the album. In the past, Rubin had given the band creative freedom on their recording material. This was something they thought essential for the album to be unique, and could only occur with his return. Originally, the album was headed in a much different direction than the final production. The album started out as a group of fast, hardcore punk songs, which Rubin rejected. Frusciante also wanted a darker, 1980s UK pop, new wave sound mixed in with 1980s hardcore. The recording process was tough for Flea, who felt like an outsider in the band and that his role was being diminished due to a musical power struggle with Frusciante. Flea wanted to create more funk-inspired songs, while Frusciante felt that the band had overused their funk side. Flea considered quitting the band after the album, but the two eventually worked out all their problems. By the Way was released in July 2002 and produced 4 singles, By the Way, the Zephyr song, Can't Stop and Universally Speaking. The album was their most subdued album to date, focusing primarily on melodic ballads as opposed to their classic rap-driven funk. Frusciante also concentrated on a more layered texture on many of the songs, often adding keyboard parts that feature low in the mix, and also writing string arrangements for songs such as Midnight and Minor Thing. The album was followed by an 18-month-long world tour. The European leg of the By the Way tour produced the band's second full-length concert DVD, Live at Slane Castle, recorded at Slane Castle in Ireland in August 2003. The band released their first full-length live album, Live in Hyde Park, recorded during their performances in Hyde Park, London. More than 258,000 fans paid over $17,100,000 for tickets over 3 nights, a 2004 record. The event ranked number 1 on Billboard's top concert box scores of 2004. In November 2003, the Chili Peppers released their greatest hits album, which featured 2 new songs, Fortune Faded and Save the Population. The 2 songs were selected out of sessions that generated 15 tracks, and Smith later said the band had hopes to use along with new compositions to create a full album after finishing the tour, but the idea was vetoed by Frusciante because his musical influences and styles had evolved and he wanted to do something new. In 2006, the band released the Grammy Award-winning Stadium Arcadium produced by Rick Rubin. Although 38 songs were created with the intention of being released as 3 separate albums spaced 6 months apart, the band instead chose to release a 28-track double album, and release 9 of the 10 as B-sides. It was their first album to debut at number 1 on the US charts, where it stayed for 2 weeks, and debuted at number 1 in the UK and 25 other countries. Stadium Arcadium sold over 7 million units. The record's first single, Donny California, was the band's fastest-selling single, debuting on top of the modern rock chart in the US, peaking at number 6 on the Billboard Hot 100, and reaching number 2 in the UK. Tell Me Baby, released next, also topped the charts in 2006. Snow, Hey Oh, was released in late 2006, breaking multiple records by 2007. The song became their 11th number 1 single, giving the band a cumulative total of 81 weeks at number 1. It was also the first time 3 consecutive singles by the band made it to number 1. Desecration Smile was released internationally in February 2007 and reached number 27 on the UK charts. Hump to Bump was planned to be the next single for the US, Canada, and Australia only, but due to positive feedback from the music video, it was released as a worldwide single in May 2007. The band began another world tour in support of Stadium Arcadium in 2006, beginning with promotional concerts in Europe and culminating in a 2-month-long European tour from May to July. During this tour, Frusciante's friend and frequent musical collaborator Josh Klinghoffer joined the touring band, contributing guitar parts, backup vocals, and keyboards. Klinghoffer's presence allowed the live performances of songs to sound more like the recorded versions, in which Frusciante laid down multiple tracks himself. The band was the musical guest for Saturday Night Live, which aired in May 2006 with featured host Tom Hanks. The group toured North America from August to November, returning to Europe in that same month for a second leg, that ran until December. The Chili Peppers began 2007 with a second North American leg, this time including Mexico, from January to March. This was followed by April shows in various cities in Australia and New Zealand and concerts in Japan in June. The Peppers concluded their tour with a third European leg from June to August. They appeared at the Live Earth concert at London's Wembley Stadium in July 2007. The band appeared at several festivals, including Denmark's Roskilde Festival, Ireland's Oxygen in July 2006, Lollapalooza in August 2006 in Grant Park, Chicago, a subsequent set at the Coachella Valley Music and Arts Festival in Indio, California in April 2007, and in August they appeared as one of 3 headliners at the Reading and Leeds festivals along with Razorlight and Smashing Pumpkins. In February 2007, Stadium Arcadium won 5 Grammys: Best Rock Album, Best Rock Song, Donny California, Best Rock Performance by a Duo or a Group with Vocal, Donny California, Best Boxed or Special Limited Edition Package, and Best Producer, Rick Rubin. Rolling Stone's 100 Best Albums of the Decade, 2000 to 2009, included Stadium Arcadium at number 74. 2008 to 2009, Hiatus and Frusciante's second departure. Following the last leg of the Stadium Arcadium tour, the band members took an extended break. Hiatus attributed this to the band being worn out from their years of non-stop work since Californication, 1999. The band's only recording during this time was in 2008 with George Clinton on his latest album George Clinton and His Gangsters of Love. Accompanied by Kim Manning, the band recorded a new version of Shirley and Lee's classic Let the Good Times Roll. The song would become the last song the band would record with Frusciante. Hiatus, who had recently become a father, was looking forward to the time off and taking care of his son Everly Bear and possibly creating a short television series called Spider and Son, which was said to recap his autobiography. Flea began taking music theory classes at the University of Southern California, and revealed plans to release a mainly instrumental solo record, that was being recorded in his home. Guest musicians include Patti Smith and a choir from the Silver Lake Conservatory. Flea also joined Thom Yorke of Radiohead and the supergroup Atoms for Peace. Frusciante continued his solo career and released his solo album, The Empyrean. Chad Smith worked with Sammy Hagar, Joe Satriani, and Michael Anthony in the supergroup Chickenfoot, as well as on his solo project, Chad Smith's Bombastic Meatbats. The band planned to remain on hiatus for a minimum of 1 year. In October 2009 the band officially ended their hiatus and minus Frusciante, entered the studio to begin writing for their 10th studio album. The band was joined by Josh Klinghoffer, who to the public was still the band's backup touring guitarist, although it was later confirmed that he was already an official member and Frusciante's replacement, with Frusciante having quit the band in July 2009. An official announcement on Frusciante's departure wasn't made until December 2009. Frusciante explained on his MySpace page that there was no drama or anger about him leaving the band this time, and that the other members were very supportive and understanding. Frusciante said he felt his musical interests had led him in a different direction, and that he needed to fully focus his efforts on his solo career. 2010 to 2014, Klinghoffer replaces Frusciante and I'm With You. The band, with Josh Klinghoffer on guitar, made their live comeback in January 2010, paying tribute to Neil Young with a cover of A Man Needs a Maid at Music Cares. After months of speculation, Klinghoffer was officially confirmed by Chad Smith as Frusciante's full-time replacement in February. The band officially began recording their 10th studio album with producer Rick Rubin in September. According to Rubin, the band recorded enough material to release a second double album, following Stadium Arcadium, but ultimately decided not to. Rubin notes, "It was painful not to share all of the material that we had, but we felt it would be too much. We really wanted it to be 12 songs, but it ended up being 14 just because nobody could agree on which 12. The recording process lasted until March 2011. Many of the songs were written between October 2009 and August 2010, and according to Flea, around 60 to 70 songs were written in the 10 months prior to entering the studio to record the album. In July 2011, the band kicked off a trio of invitation-only warm-up dates in California. These were the first shows the band played since August 2007, and their first official shows with Klinghoffer as their lead guitarist. I'm With You, the band's 10th studio album, was released in the United States in August 2011. The album topped the charts in 18 different countries, although failed to provide the band with their second straight #1 debut in the US. The album was met with mostly positive reviews from the critics. The album's first single, The Adventures of Rain Dance Maggie, was released a month earlier and went on to become the band's 12th #1 hit single, topping their own record. Kreayshawn was tapped to direct the music video for the single. However, due to unknown reasons, the video shot by Kreayshawn went unreleased, and a second video directed by Mark Glassfeld was released in its place. Monarchy of Roses, Look Around, and Did I Let You Know, released only in Brazil, followed as singles, music videos. Brendan's Death Song would be the next single and released during the summer of 2012. The band kicked off a month-long promotional tour in August 2011, starting in Asia. In August 2011, the band appeared on movie screens throughout the world via satellite from Cologne, Germany, performing the entire new album in sequence, minus Even You Brutus, and adding Give It Away and Me and My Friends. The band officially kicked off the I'm With You tour in September 2011. On the next day they played in Costa Rica. In December, the band was hired by Roman Abramovich for a reported £5 million to perform at his New Year's Eve celebration at his estate on the Caribbean island of St. Bart's, and the show included a special appearance from Toots Hibbert of Toots and the Maytals as they played a rendition of Louie Louie together. The tour lasted into 2013 and was one of the band's biggest to date. All shows from the upcoming world tour were made available to purchase as downloads through livechilipeppers.com. The North American leg of the tour, which was expected to begin in January 2012, had to be postponed due to a surgery Kiedis went to resolve multiple foot injuries he had suffered through since the Stadium Arcadium tour. The first US leg of the tour, including dates in Canada, kicked off in March and lasted into June, followed by summer shows in Europe, while the rest of the already scheduled US dates took place in August and then from September through November. Jack Irons and Cliff Martinez again joined the band during their August 12 performance of Give It Away in Los Angeles. Following the I'm With You World Tour, the band set out on another small tour consisting mostly of festivals in the United States. However, the tour expanded to dates in South America as well for November. Flea, along with Chili Peppers touring percussionist, Mauro Refosco, spent the band's break keeping busy with their side project Atoms for Peace, who had many dates throughout the world scheduled from July to November 2013. The band was nominated for 2 MTV Europe Music Awards for Best Rock Band and Best Live Artist, and nominated for Best Group at the 2012 People's Choice Awards. I'm With You was also nominated for a 2012 Grammy Award for Best Rock Album. The band released 2011 Live EP in March 2012. The EP, a free 5 live song MP,